Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the large window of his ship, watching the alien vessels approach Earth. The Kalari ships looked like giant silver insects floating through space. Their hulls pulsed with strange blue light that made him feel uneasy. 3 years had passed since the war ended, but Jake still felt nervous every time he saw those ships. Captain Lisa Brooks walked up to him holding a small computer tablet. Her face showed no emotion, but Jake knew her well enough to see the worry in her eyes. She had been his intelligence officer for 8 years, and she never brought him good news with that expression. "What do you have for me, Lisa?" Jake asked, taking the tablet from her hands. "More surveillance reports from the border systems," Lisa said quietly. "The Kalari are keeping their promises on paper, but something feels wrong about their movements." Jake looked at the data on the screen. Trade ships moving on schedule, diplomatic meetings happening as planned, no military attacks anywhere. Everything looked perfect, which was exactly what worried him. During the war, the Kalari had been brutal and direct. This sudden change to peaceful behavior did not match what humanity knew about them. Dr. Alex Parker entered the bridge carrying a thick folder of papers. He was the ship's expert on alien languages and behavior. His job was to understand how the Kalari thought and communicated. Alex looked tired, like he had been working all night again. "Admiral, I need to show you something important," Alex said, spreading several documents across the nearby table. "My team has been studying Kalari communications for months. We found something disturbing." Jake and Lisa gathered around the table as Alex pointed to various alien symbols and their translations. The papers showed message intercepts, language, patterns, and cultural analysis reports. "Look at this word here," Alex said, pointing to a complex alien symbol. During the peace negotiations, the Kalari used this symbol when they agreed to the treaty. We translated it as peace because that made sense in context. "But it does not really mean peace?" Lisa asked. "Not exactly," Alex replied. "I found this same symbol in historical Kalari texts from their archives. In their ancient language, this word means preparation pause, or time to gather strength. They are not talking about permanent peace. They are talking about a temporary break." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had suspected something like this, but hearing the proof made it real. The Kalari had never intended to honor the peace treaty. They were just buying time to prepare for another attack. Commander Ryan Kelly arrived on the bridge just as Alex finished explaining his discovery. Ryan was in charge of military intelligence, and he spent his days tracking alien ship movements and activities. He carried a larger tablet showing star maps and ship positions. "Admiral, you need to see this," Ryan said, setting his tablet on the table next to Alex's papers. "We have been watching Kalari movements in neutral space for the past 6 months. Look at these patterns." The star map showed dozens of small dots representing Kalari ships. At first glance, they seemed to be moving randomly through space, conducting scientific research and trade missions. But when Ryan connected the dots with colored lines, a clear pattern emerged. "These are not random movements," Ryan continued. "These paths match exactly the reconnaissance patterns they used before attacking our colonies during the war. They are mapping our defenses and looking for weak points." Lisa studied the star map carefully. "How many ships are we talking about?" "At least 200 vessels that we can detect," Ryan answered. "But these are just the ones we can see. The Kalari are good at hiding their ships. There could be twice that number operating in areas we cannot monitor." Jake looked at all the evidence spread across the table. The language analysis, the ship movement patterns, and his own gut feeling all pointed to the same conclusion. The peace treaty was a lie, and the Kalari were preparing for another war. "Has anyone else seen this information?" Jake asked. "General Patricia Williams knows," Lisa replied. "She has been expecting something like this since the day we signed the treaty." Jake was not surprised to hear that General Williams had been suspicious. She was the head of Earth Defense Command, and one of the smartest military leaders humanity had ever produced. During the war, she had predicted several Kalari attacks before they happened. "What is the general doing about this?" Jake asked. "She started something called Project Overwatch right after the peace signing," Ryan said. "It is classified above our level. but I know it involves secret preparations for another war. Dr. Parker gathered his papers and looked at the Admiral. There's one more thing you should know. The Kalari communications suggest they believe we are completely fooled by their deception. They think humans are too naive and trusting to see through their lies. That might work in our favor, Lisa said. If they think we are unprepared, they might get careless. Jake nodded and walked back to the window. The Kalari ships were closer, now preparing to dock with the orbital station for another round of diplomatic meetings. The aliens inside those ships were probably laughing at how easy it was to trick the humans, but Jake knew something the Kalari did not. Humanity had learned hard lessons during the war. They had learned not to trust enemies who smiled while sharpening their knives. They had learned to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Keep monitoring everything, Jake told his team. Every ship movement, every communication, every change in their behavior. When they make their move, we need to be ready. As the alien ships docked with the station, Jake thought about the thousands of human colonies scattered across dozens of star systems. Families were living their lives, building homes, raising children, and believing they were safe because of the peace treaty. They trusted their leaders to protect them. Jake would not let them down. Neither would General Williams or the thousands of other military personnel who knew the truth. Humanity would be ready when the Kalari showed their true intentions. The peace agreement was indeed a lie, but humanity had known it all along. The real question was not if the Kalari would attack again, but when. And when that day came, they would discover that humans could lie just as well as they could. The war had never really ended. It had just moved into a new phase, one where preparation and patience would matter more than weapons and courage. Humanity had always been good at both. The elevator descended deep into the mountain, carrying Carlos Rodriguez down to levels that did not exist on any official map. The underground facility beneath Montana's Glacier National Park was one of humanity's best-kept secrets. Carlos was the chief engineer for the most important construction project in human history, and very few people knew it existed. The elevator stopped at level 15, nearly a mile underground. Carlos stepped out into a massive cavern that had been carved from solid rock. The space was larger than 10 football fields, filled with the sounds of construction machinery and thousands of workers building something extraordinary. Dr. Michelle Turner was waiting for him near the main construction platform. She was the lead scientist for the technology development team, and she looked excited about something. Michelle had spent the last 2 years working with salvaged alien equipment, trying to understand how Kalari technology worked. Carlos, you have to see this, Michelle said, leading him toward a section of the facility where strange organic-looking materials were being assembled into ship components. We finally figured out how their biomechanical systems work. Carlos followed her to a workstation where several technicians were carefully handling what looked like living metal. The material seemed to breathe and pulse with its own internal rhythm. It was both fascinating and disturbing to watch. During the war, we collected pieces of destroyed Kalari ships, Michelle explained. At first, we thought their technology was purely mechanical, but we were wrong. They grow their ships like living organisms, then fuse them with mechanical systems. How does that help us? Carlos asked, watching as a technician shaped the living metal into what looked like part of a ship's hull. We can do it too, but better, Michelle replied with a smile. Human engineering combined with adapted Kalari biotechnology. We are creating ships that are stronger, faster, and more flexible than anything either species has built before. Carlos looked around the construction area and saw dozens of ship components in various stages of completion. Some looked like traditional, human designs, while others incorporated the flowing, organic shapes of Kalari technology. The combination was unlike anything he had ever seen. Agent Kevin Davis stood in the diplomatic quarter of Kalari Prime, the alien capital world. He wore the clothing of a human trade representative and carried official documents that identified him as a negotiator for commercial agreements. But Kevin's real job was far more dangerous. For 2 years, Kevin had lived among the Kalari, learning their customs and gathering intelligence about their military capabilities. His cover identity was perfect. and the aliens trusted him enough to allow him access to areas where few humans had ever been. Kevin walked through the bustling alien marketplace, listening to conversations and observing behavior patterns. The Kalari spoke freely around him, assuming that humans could not understand their rapid, complex language. They had no idea that Kevin spoke their dialect fluently. Near the government district, Kevin noticed unusual activity. Military transports were moving equipment toward the spaceports, and there were more armed guards than usual around official buildings. The aliens were trying to be subtle, but Kevin had been trained to notice such things. That evening, Kevin attended a diplomatic reception where Kalari officials mixed with representatives from various species. He maintained his role as a friendly trade negotiator while carefully listening to conversations around him. The human colonies are expanding faster than expected, one Kalari military officer said to another in their native language. Command wants to accelerate the timeline. Good, the second officer replied. I am tired of pretending to respect these inferior creatures. The sooner we eliminate them, the better. Kevin continued smiling and nodding at a nearby trade discussion while memorizing every word the officer spoke. This was exactly the kind of intelligence that would save human lives. Captain Amy Foster commanded a small fleet of ships that looked like ordinary cargo haulers. They carried legitimate trade goods and official documentation showing them as civilian vessels. But hidden beneath their harmless exterior, each ship contained advanced weapon systems and battle-trained crews. Amy's ship, the cargo vessel New Hope, was docked at a space station in neutral territory. Her crew was conducting what appeared to be routine maintenance, but they were actually testing concealed weapon systems and practicing combat procedures. How long for the transformation sequence? Amy asked her chief engineer. 3 minutes. And 40 seconds from civilian mode to full combat readiness, the engineer replied. We have managed to cut 20 seconds off the time since last month. Amy nodded approvingly. When the time came, those few extra seconds could mean the difference between life and death. Her fleet was part of a larger network of disguised military, vessels scattered throughout human space and beyond. In the ship's hidden command center, Amy's communications officer was monitoring Kalari military frequencies. The aliens thought their communications were secure, but human technology had advanced significantly during the peace years. Captain, we are picking up increased chatter from Kalari Fleet Command, the officer reported. They are moving assets into position around 17 human colonies. 17, Amy repeated. That matches our intelligence estimates exactly. Send a coded message to Fleet Command. Tell them the timeline has moved up. Back on Earth, Mayor Tom Bradley of New Geneva Colony was hosting a cultural exchange event with visiting Kalari diplomats. The colony's central plaza was decorated with flags from both species, and hundreds of human families had gathered to meet their alien visitors. Tom gave a speech about friendship and cooperation between species, while the Kalari delegation nodded politely and made appropriate responses. The whole event was being broadcast across the human colonies as an example of successful peace-building. What Tom did not know was that half the families in the audience were actually military personnel in civilian clothing. The real colonists had been quietly evacuated to hidden shelters over the past several weeks. The entire event was an elaborate deception designed to make the Kalari believe that humans remained trusting and unprepared. Dr. Parker's xenobiology team had been working on a special project in a secure laboratory beneath the colony. They had developed something that would surprise the Kalari when they finally revealed their true intentions. The biological weapon is ready for deployment, Dr. Parker reported to his military liaison. It targets the specific proteins that allow Kalari biomechanical integration. Without that integration, their technology becomes useless. How do we deploy it? The officer asked. We have been secretly introducing it into the air and water systems of locations where Kalari forces are likely to attack. When they breathe our air or touch our surfaces, they will be infected. The virus will not harm humans, but it will disable Kalari technology systems. General Williams sat in her command center, watching reports from across human space. Her networks of spies, hidden facilities, and disguised military assets were all reporting the same thing. The Kalari were preparing for a massive coordinated attack. "How much longer do we have?" she asked her intelligence chief. "Based on their movement patterns, probably 2 weeks," came the reply. "Maybe less if they decide to move faster." "Good," General Williams said. "We are ready for them. In fact, we have been ready for this day since the moment we signed that fake peace treaty." She looked at the strategic displays showing human colonies, military assets, and Kalari positions. The aliens thought they were hunting sheep, but they were about to discover they had walked into a trap set by wolves. The Kalari had made one critical mistake. They assumed that humans were as naive and trusting as they pretended to be. They believed their own propaganda about human weakness and gullibility. Soon they would learn the truth about humanity's capacity for long-term planning, patience, and strategic deception. The peace agreement had indeed been a lie, but the Kalari were not the only ones who knew how to lie. The attack began at exactly 0800 Earth Standard Time across 17 human colonies simultaneously. Kalari battle fleets emerged from hyperspace like dark clouds blotting out the stars. Their bioships were massive, organic-looking vessels that seemed to breathe and pulse with malevolent life. Admiral Morrison was on the bridge of his flagship when the emergency alerts started flooding in. Red warning lights flashed across every display screen as reports came in from colony after colony under attack. Kalari fleets have appeared at New Geneva, Port Liberty, Highland Station, and 14 other locations. His communications officer reported. "They are broadcasting a message declaring the peace treaty void." "What is their excuse this time?" Morrison asked, though he already knew it would be something fabricated. "They claim humanity violated the treaty through aggressive, territorial expansion," came the reply. "They say our new colonies represent a threat to Kalari security." Morrison almost laughed at the absurdity. The human colonies were farming communities and research stations, hardly military threats. But the Kalari needed an excuse for what they had always planned to do. On New Phoenix Colony, Governor Linda Clark stood in the emergency command center watching alien ships descend through the atmosphere. The massive vessels looked like flying cathedrals of bone and metal, their weapons charging with sickly green light. "All civilians to the shelters," Linda ordered over the colony-wide communication system. "This is not a drill. All civilians to the designated safe areas immediately." What the approaching Kalari forces did not know was that the civilians hurrying through the streets were actually sophisticated holographic projections. The real colonists had been evacuated weeks ago to hidden underground facilities that did not appear on any official records. The first Kalari landing ships touched down in the colony's main plaza, disgorging hundreds of alien warriors. They moved with predatory grace, their biomechanical armor gleaming in the sunlight. These were the same creatures that had terrorized human settlements during the war. But something was wrong. The colony seemed too quiet, too empty. The Kalari commander, a tall creature with 4 arms and glowing red eyes, gestured for his troops to spread out and begin their assault on the civilian population. They found buildings full of holographic people who vanished when touched. They found shops and homes that looked lived in but contained no actual inhabitants. Slowly, the truth began to dawn on them. They had been expected. Colonel Steve Martinez crouched in a concealed bunker beneath the colony's main street, watching the Kalari troops through hidden cameras. He commanded 3,000 human Marines who had been waiting and hiding for exactly this moment. "All units, this is command," Steve spoke into his communication device. "The guests have arrived. Time to welcome them properly." Across the colony, hidden panels slid open in walls, streets, and rooftops. Human soldiers emerged from concealment, their weapons already trained on the confused Kalari forces. The aliens had expected to find helpless civilians, not a fully prepared military force. The battle was swift and brutal. Kalari warriors were skilled fighters, but they had been caught completely off guard. Their biomechanical weapons were impressive, but human firearms and explosives were equally effective. Within an hour, most of the alien landing force was either dead or captured. Similar scenes played out across all 17 targeted colonies. The Kalari had planned a coordinated surprise attack against unprepared settlements. Instead, they found themselves fighting prepared defenders who had been waiting for them. Dr. Parker watched the battle reports from his laboratory with grim satisfaction. His biological weapon was already being deployed through the air systems of every colony under attack. The Kalari would not notice the effects immediately, but their biomechanical systems would begin failing within hours. How long before they realize what is happening to them? His assistant asked. 24 hours for complete system breakdown, Dr. Parker replied. Their armor will stop working, their weapons will fail, and their ships will lose integration with their organic components. They will be fighting with damaged equipment against an enemy, using fully functional technology. In space above New Phoenix Colony, Kalari Admiral Vorthak the Destroyer commanded the alien fleet from his massive flagship. He was a veteran of many battles, and had earned his name by completely destroying 3 enemy civilizations. This attack was supposed to be routine, but the reports from the surface made no sense. His ground forces were encountering heavy resistance from what should have been defenseless human settlements. Worse, several of his ship systems were beginning to malfunction, for no apparent reason. Surface Commander, report your status, Vorthak demanded over the communication link. We have encountered unexpected resistance, came the reply, punctuated by the sounds of weapons fire. The humans were prepared for our arrival. This was not a surprise attack. Vorthak felt something he had rarely experienced in his long military career. Doubt. How could the humans have known about the attack? The peace treaty deception had been planned carefully, with no leaks to human intelligence. On Earth, General Williams stood in her command center surrounded by displays showing all 17 battle zones. Her staff worked efficiently, coordinating the defense of human colonies across dozens of star systems. Casualty reports? She asked her aide. Light human losses so far, came the reply. The Kalari are taking heavy casualties and their equipment is beginning to fail. Our biological weapon is working better than expected. Williams nodded with satisfaction. Project Overwatch had been 3 years in the making, and it was performing exactly as designed. The Kalari had walked into a trap that had been carefully prepared since the day the peace treaty was signed. What about their fleet movements? Williams asked. Several Kalari ships are reporting system failures, her intelligence chief reported. They are trying to retreat to safe distance, but our hidden fleet is moving to intercept. In the outer system near New Phoenix Colony, Captain Amy Foster's disguised cargo ship suddenly dropped their civilian appearance. Hidden armor plating deployed, weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments, and military identification codes replaced trade registrations. Within minutes, 20 innocent-looking cargo haulers had transformed into deadly warships. They moved to intercept the retreating Kalari vessels, cutting off their escape routes. This is Captain Foster to all units, Amy announced over the tactical communication channel. Welcome to the real war. Show these aliens what humanity has learned during our 3 years of peace. The space battle was even more one-sided than the ground fighting. Kalari ships were impressive when their biomechanical systems worked properly, but the human biological weapon was causing widespread system failures. Weapons misfired, shields fluctuated, and navigation systems provided incorrect data. Meanwhile, human ships fought with the precision of crews who had spent years training for this exact scenario. They knew every Kalari tactical doctrine, every weakness in alien ship design, and every way to exploit the system failures that were spreading through the enemy fleet. Agent Kevin Davis, still maintaining his cover on Kalari Prime, sent a coded message to Human Command. Enemy leadership is in panic. They cannot understand how their surprise attack failed so completely. Recommend immediate follow-up operations while they are confused and demoralized. Back on New Phoenix Colony, Colonel Martinez accepted the surrender of the surviving Kalari ground forces. The alien warriors looked defeated and confused, their once mighty biomechanical armor now functioning poorly, or not at all. Tell your admiral that humanity sends its regards, Martinez said to the captured Kalari commander. And tell him that we knew this day was coming from the moment you offered us peace. The first phase of the new war was over before it had really begun. The Kalari had revealed their true intentions, just as human intelligence had predicted. But instead of finding easy victims, They had discovered that humanity had spent 3 years preparing for this betrayal. The peace agreement had indeed been a lie, but the Kalari were not the only ones capable of deception. Now they would learn what happened when they underestimated human intelligence, preparation, and determination. The real war was just beginning, and this time humanity would not be fighting defensively. They would be carrying the battle to the enemy, armed with better technology, superior tactics, and the element of surprise that the Kalari had thought belonged to them. The hidden human fleet revealed itself across Kalari space like a nightmare coming to life. Ships that had spent 3 years disguised as harmless cargo vessels suddenly transformed into instruments of war. Captain Amy Foster watched with satisfaction as her converted freighter opened fire on a Kalari supply depot that had been considered completely secure. Direct hit on their fuel storage facility, her weapons officer reported. Secondary explosions spreading throughout the complex. Amy's ship, along with dozens of others, had been operating deep behind enemy lines for years. The Kalari had grown, accustomed to seeing human trade vessels in their space, never suspecting that each one carried enough firepower to destroy a military installation. Target their communication relays next, Amy ordered. Cut their ability to coordinate a response. Across 17 star systems, similar attacks were happening simultaneously. Human ships that had been ignored as civilian traffic were striking, at the heart of Kalari military infrastructure. Supply lines that had operated safely for decades were suddenly under attack by an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere. Engineer Carlos Rodriguez stood in the main control room of the secret shipyard, watching as hundreds of advanced human vessels launched into space. The underground facility that had taken 3 years to build was now producing ships faster than any construction yard in human history. Launch Bay 7 reports ready for deployment, his assistant announced. Send them to join the Third Fleet, Carlos replied. Admiral Morrison will need every ship we can give him. The vessels emerging from the hidden shipyards were unlike anything humanity had built before. They combined human engineering expertise with adapted Kalari biotechnology, creating ships that were stronger, faster, and more maneuverable than either species had previously achieved. Carlos watched as a new battleship cleared the launch bay, its hull gleaming with the strange organic metal alloy that Dr. Turner's team had perfected. The ship could repair minor damage automatically, adapt its configuration for different battle situations, and interface directly with its human crew in ways that traditional ships could not. Agent Kevin Davis no longer needed to pretend to be a peaceful trade negotiator. His network of human operatives across Kalari space had spent 3 years infiltrating alien infrastructure, and now they struck simultaneously at 50 different targets. Kevin stood in the main computer center of Kalari Prime's orbital defense platform, watching as his team inserted viruses into the alien command systems. The Kalari had trusted him with access to their most sensitive facilities, never suspecting that he was anything more than a friendly human businessman. Upload complete, announced Maria Santos, one of Kevin's technical specialists. Their orbital defenses will target their own ships if they try to launch any more attacks. Good, Kevin replied. What about the Fleet Command network? Already compromised, said another team member, Ben Taylor. We now have access to their military communications, ship positions, and tactical plans. They cannot coordinate their forces without us knowing about it. Kevin smiled as he thought about the Kalari officers who had befriended him over the past 3 years. They had bragged about their plans to destroy humanity, never realizing they were talking to a human intelligence agent who was recording every word. Dr. Michelle Turner's technological breakthroughs were proving devastating in space combat. Human ships equipped with biomechanical fusion drives could now match Kalari maneuverability, while maintaining superior human tactical systems. The hybrid technology gave human forces advantages that neither species had possessed alone. The new drive systems are performing beyond expectations, Michelle reported to General Williams over a secure communication link. Our ships can outturn Kalari vessels and maintain higher acceleration for longer periods. What about the biological weapon integration? Williams asked. Even better, Michelle replied with enthusiasm. We can now deploy Dr. Parker's virus through our weapon systems. Every shot we fire carries the biological agent that disrupts Kalari biomechanical integration. The combination of superior technology, strategic preparation, and biological warfare was proving overwhelming. Kalari forces that had expected easy victory found themselves fighting an enemy that exceeded their capabilities in every area. General Williams coordinated the largest military operation in human history from her command center on Earth. Her forces were not just striking at Kalari fleets, but systematically destroying their ability to wage war. Industrial facilities, research centers, training academies, and logistics networks all came under simultaneous attack. Sector 7 reports complete success, her aide announced. The Kalari shipyard complex has been destroyed with minimal human casualties. Excellent, Williams replied. What about their research facilities? Targets Alpha through Gamma have been eliminated, came the reply. We have also captured their primary biotechnology laboratory intact. Dr. Turner's team will want to examine their equipment. Williams studied the tactical displays showing Kalari territory. Red markers indicated destroyed facilities, while blue markers showed areas under human control. The map was changing rapidly as human forces advanced on multiple fronts. The Kalari were discovering that the humans they had dismissed as inferior were actually superior in the most important areas: planning, preparation, and strategic thinking. Every aspect of the human counterattack had been carefully designed to exploit Kalari weaknesses while maximizing human advantages. Admiral Vorthak the destroyer found himself commanding a fleet that was falling apart around him. His bioships were suffering from widespread system failures as the human biological weapons spread through his forces. Ship after ship reported critical malfunctions. Fleet Command, this is the destroyer Krathmore, came a transmission from one of his captains. We have lost main propulsion and weapons control, requesting immediate assistance. Vorthak wanted to provide help, but half his fleet was experiencing similar problems. The mysterious system failures were spreading faster than his engineers could understand them, let alone fix them. All ships retreat to safe distance, Vorthak ordered. Establish defensive perimeter and await further orders. But even retreat was difficult when navigation systems provided incorrect data and communication equipment functioned erratically. The disciplined Kalari fleet was becoming a scattered collection of disabled ships trying to escape an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Agent Davis sent another coded message to Human Command from his position deep in Kalari space. Enemy leadership structure collapsing. Command authority breaking down as communication systems fail. Recommend immediate assault on primary command centers while confusion persists. The message reached Admiral Morrison as he led the main human battle fleet toward Kalari Prime. His ships were a mixture of traditional human designs and the new hybrid vessels from Carlos Rodriguez's secret shipyards. Signal all ships, Morrison ordered. Prepare for final assault on the enemy capital. This war ends today. Captain Foster's disguised fleet had completed its mission of destroying Kalari supply lines and was now moving to support Morrison's attack. Her ships had revealed themselves across dozens of systems, striking at targets the enemy had never thought to defend. Admiral Morrison, this is Captain Foster, she reported over the fleet communication channel. Supply lines severed, infrastructure destroyed, and enemy communications compromised. The path to their capital is clear. Dr. Parker monitored the biological weapons' effectiveness from his laboratory. The virus was spreading through Kalari populations faster than he had dared hope, disabling their biomechanical technology across multiple star systems. Complete system breakdown now confirmed in 80% of targeted areas, Dr. Parker reported. The Kalari are essentially fighting with broken equipment against our fully functional technology. Colonel Martinez, now commanding ground forces across multiple colonies, prepared his troops for the next phase of operations. The successful defense of human settlements was just the beginning. All units prepare for offensive operations, Martinez announced to his commanders. We are taking the fight to them. Every Kalari military installation within striking distance is now a target. The tables had completely turned. The Kalari had expected to find helpless human colonies and instead discovered a military force that had been preparing for 3 years. They had planned a surprise attack and instead walked into a trap that would destroy their empire. The peace agreement had been a lie, but humanity had been the better liars. Now the Kalari would learn what happened when they underestimated a species that valued long-term planning over short-term aggression. The war was far from over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had proven that patience, preparation, and superior strategy could overcome seemingly impossible odds. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again. 6 months after the Kalari betrayal, Admiral Morrison stood in what had once been their primary fleet command station. The massive alien structure, built from living metal and organic compounds, now lay in ruins around him. Broken bioships drifted powerless through space, their integration systems permanently destroyed by human biological weapons. Vorthak the Destroyer, once the most feared military commander in Kalari space, now sat in a holding cell aboard Morrison's flagship. The alien's forearms were restrained and his biomechanical armor had been removed. Without his technological enhancements, he looked smaller and less threatening than Morrison had expected. "You do not understand what you have done," Vorthak said in heavily accented English. "The Kalari Empire has ruled this region of space for 1,000 years. You are insects compared to us." Morrison studied the defeated alien commander. Even in captivity, Vorthak still believed in Kalari superiority. The concept that humans might be more capable than his species seemed impossible for him to accept. "Your empire ruled through fear and violence," Morrison replied. "That only works until you meet someone who is not afraid and better prepared for violence than you are." Dr. Parker entered the holding area carrying a portable computer terminal. His biological weapon had been even more successful than anyone had dared hope. The virus that targeted Kalari biomechanical integration had spread throughout their empire, crippling their technology and military capabilities. The infection rate now exceeds 90% across all Kalari systems, Dr. Parker reported. Their bioships are essentially useless and their ground forces are fighting with equipment that fails constantly. Vorthak looked at Dr. Parker with something resembling confusion. The Kalari had always prided themselves on their biological and technological superiority. The idea that humans could create a weapon that turned their greatest strength into a weakness was beyond his comprehension. "How did you know?" Vorthak asked. "How did you know we would attack?" Captain Lisa Brooks entered the holding area carrying a thick folder of documents and recordings. For 3 years, she had been gathering evidence of Kalari deception and military preparations. Now she could finally reveal the extent of human intelligence operations. "We knew because we studied you," Lisa said, opening the folder and spreading papers across the table. "Every communication you sent, every ship movement, every diplomatic lie. We recorded and analyzed all of it." She showed Vorthak intercepted messages between Kalari commanders discussing the planned attack. She played audio recordings of conversations where alien officers bragged about how easy it would be to destroy human colonies. She presented shipping manifests showing military equipment being moved into position months before the assault. "You thought we were too naive to understand your true intentions," Lisa continued, "but we were watching everything you did and preparing for the attack you were planning." Vorthak examined the evidence with growing disbelief. The humans had been monitoring Kalari activities from the moment the peace treaty was signed. Every secret meeting, every classified order, every supposedly secure communication had been observed and recorded. "This is impossible," Vorthak protested. "Our security systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. No inferior species could penetrate them." Agent Kevin Davis chose that moment to enter the holding area, still wearing the business clothing he had used during his years of deep cover operations. Vorthak recognized him immediately as the friendly human trade representative who had been welcomed into the highest levels of Kalari society. "Hello, Admiral," Kevin said with a smile. "Thank you for all the classified information you shared with me over the years. Your bragging about planned attacks was especially helpful." The reality of human deception finally began to penetrate Vorthak's consciousness. The harmless trade representative had been a spy. The naive humans had been planning and preparing while pretending to believe in peace. Everything he thought he knew about human capabilities was wrong. General Williams arrived at the command station along with representatives from the Earth Defense Council. She came to oversee the final negotiations that would determine the future relationship between humans and the Kalari Empire. The terms are simple, Williams announced to the assembled Kalari delegation. Complete military disarmament, withdrawal from disputed territories, and recognition of human sovereignty over 17 star systems that now belong to us. The Kalari delegates looked stunned. They had come expecting to discuss terms for human surrender, not their own defeat. The concept that they might lose territory to humans had never occurred to them. "You cannot be serious," said Kalari diplomat Zethkar. "The Empire will never accept such terms." "The Empire has no choice," Williams replied calmly. "Your military has been destroyed, your technology has been compromised, and your government structure is collapsing. You can accept our terms and survive, or you can refuse them and face complete destruction." Captain Amy Foster's fleet had spent the past month systematically dismantling Kalari military infrastructure across dozens of systems. Her disguised ships had struck at targets throughout their empire, destroying everything that could be used to threaten human colonies. Kalari shipyard complex at Vorthon Prime has been eliminated, Amy reported over the communication system. That was their last major construction facility. They cannot build new ships without it. Engineer Carlos Rodriguez was already planning the next phase of operations from his underground facility. The secret shipyards that had produced humanity's victory fleet were now being expanded to support long-term military presence in former Kalari territory. Construction of permanent bases in the captured systems is ahead of schedule, Carlos reported. We will have fortified positions throughout the region within 6 months. Dr. Michelle Turner was examining captured Kalari technology to understand how it could be safely integrated with human systems. The hybrid ships that had won the war were just the beginning of what might be possible. Their biomechanical technology has potential applications beyond military use, Michelle explained to the research team. We could revolutionize medicine, construction, and space exploration by adapting their techniques. But the most important consideration was ensuring that the Kalari could never threaten humanity again. The peace treaty they had signed 3 years earlier had been a lie designed to buy time for another attack. This time, the terms would be enforced through strength rather than trust. Admiral Morrison addressed the Kalari delegation one final time before the formal surrender ceremony. He wanted them to understand exactly why their empire had fallen and what lessons other species should learn from their defeat. "You made 3 critical mistakes," Morrison said. "First, you assumed that peaceful behavior meant weakness. Second, you believed your own propaganda about human inferiority. Third, you thought that superior technology could overcome superior strategy." He gestured toward the ruined command station around them. "Technology can be countered with better technology. Fear can be overcome with preparation and courage, but strategic thinking and long-term planning are advantages that cannot be easily defeated." The formal surrender ceremony took place on the bridge of Morrison's flagship, with representatives from multiple human colonies present as witnesses. The Kalari Empire officially recognized defeat and accepted the terms dictated by humanity. Vorthak signed the surrender documents with obvious reluctance. "This is not over," he said quietly. "The Kalari will remember this humiliation." "Good," Morrison replied. "Remember it well. Remember that humanity values peace, but prepares for war. Remember that we keep our promises to friends and our threats to enemies. Most importantly, remember that underestimating humans is a mistake that species make only once." General Williams took control of the former Kalari command station, which would serve as the headquarters for human military operations in the region. The strategic location would allow humanity to monitor and control former enemy territory. "Signal all human forces," Williams ordered. "Mission accomplished. The threat has been eliminated and our colonies are secure." As news of the victory spread throughout human space, celebrations began on every world and space station. But the military leadership remained focused on the future. Other alien species would be watching to see how humanity handled its victory. Dr. Parker continued his research on biological countermeasures, knowing that other species might develop similar integration technologies. Agent Davis began planning intelligence operations to monitor potential future threats. Captain Foster prepared her fleet for long-term patrol duties in the captured territories. The peace agreement had indeed been a lie, but it had served an important purpose. It had given humanity time to prepare for the inevitable conflict while allowing the Kalari to reveal their true nature. The 3 years of false peace had been used wisely. Admiral Morrison stood at the observation deck of the captured command station, looking out at the stars that now fell under human protection. The galaxy was a dangerous place filled with species that viewed others as either slaves or enemies. But humanity had proven that there was a third option: respected equals who were too well prepared and dangerous to threaten. The Kalari Empire had learned this lesson at a cost that would serve as a warning to others.